All right, I already know. I already know I'm gonna make a lot of Sony shooters mad when I make this video, but I've also made the opposite video. So if you want to go and see the opposite video, why the A1 is a better camera than the R5 and why it's a good camera, go see that video. But this video is going to be 10 reasons why the R5 is better than the A1. And this is an important video because the A1 is out around the time of the popularity of the R5 and its infamous overheating, and the specs are a lot similar. But the Sony A1 is $6,500 and the price of the Canon R5 is $38.99, depending on where you buy it from. I think the price is probably going to go down pretty soon because they're coming out with some more cameras like the R1, the R5S, things of that nature. But before we get into that stuff, support the Patreon, the affiliate links in the description below. If you feel like buying any of these cameras, click the link in the description below. When I get the cameras, I'll get an affiliate link. If I'm missing something, help me out. I'm doing this all by myself. Editing, filming, getting out there in the public and stuff like that. If you see somebody guest starring, that's because they want to jump in on a video, but everything else I'm pretty much doing myself, so help the channel out. You can't make a complaint if you haven't tried to help us out. So help me out. Help us out. Try to get this channel better, get these cameras in my hands, and I can give you some real reviews of me in the field doing all this stuff. If you just support the channel, Patreon, and the affiliate links below, I get a commission from that. Like, subscribe, all that stuff helps out this channel. Now let's get right into number 10. Number 10 is the color science of the R5 is a little bit better than the A1. And the reason I say this is because a lot of people were saying the A1 is good on color science and it's better than anything Sony has ever come out with. But if you got to pay $6,500 for that tweaked color science, and Canon has really already like stolen the game when it comes to color science, you know, skin tones and all of those stuff, that will be a thumbs down for Sony and a thumbs up for Canon, because Canon camera only costs about $38.99. All right, so the next thing will be the rear LCD screen. A lot of people say this rear LCD screen is a really beautiful screen. A lot of people say that it has never looked so good on a Canon camera on the back of the screen. So I think it looks better than the Sony screens because a lot of people are saying Sony is just recycling screens. A lot of it looks the same. It's like minuscule updates on the image quality of the screen, and a lot of people are making it seem as though Sony has just like stocked up on a whole bunch of the screens and they kind of look all the same. Instead of designing their own screens or designing a screen that is always updated, they kind of make minuscule updates to a screen that maybe they mass produce or mass purchase. I don't know, but it just seems recycled as far as the screens are concerned. A lot of people were saying about that in the rear LCD screen. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I put that at number 9 because it's not as important. But number 8 is the robust feel of the R5 over the A1. Now, of course, I have not touched both of these cameras, but I've touched Sony mirrorless cameras before, and I know Sony has put out a lot of the same type of cameras with the same type of feel. A lot of people are saying the R5 really just feels right in the hand, and there's no reason for me to deny this because Canon has already had cameras that felt better than Sony. Even the mirrorless Eos-r, the regular R, it felt good in my hands when I held it. So, and the A7S3, A7R, all these cameras that I've held in my hand that are from Sony just seem like bricks, and they look like bricks. But the A1 does make advancements on it, but not as fast as Canon is making advancements. That Canon knows what they want, the viewers want. They know what the content creators need. And they've been doing it for years, so they've been doing research on this for years, whereas Sony, even though they've been in the camera game, they haven't been at the forefront. So they haven't had technology and money to devote to it, even if they might know about it. Now they're just getting into the camera world as far as their popularity is concerned, and they're now competing with the big three, or the big two, Canon and Nikon. Number 7 will be the menu system. Canon has always had an amazing menu system as far as a camera is concerned. Probably one of the best menu systems in the world. But the fact that now the A1 is coming out with a new menu system, yes, it's probably a decent menu system. And yes, I have kind of gotten used to the A7R Mark II, but at what extent? There's still a lot of different submenus in the old A series cameras that is really hard to get used to. But the fact that you have to have now a new system, because the newer cameras now have this new menu system, where you have to get used to it, That's more learning curves that you got to get over. A lot of people are like, oh, stop whining about the menu system. Sony's doing great. They're trying. Yes, but the fact that you have to put in time to understand where everything else is now, unlike Canon, where they've had a great menu system and they've always had a great menu system with minuscule changes to it, means that you don't have to actually get used to anything different, which means you can save time doing other things like learning about composition, lighting, and all those other things instead of learning about your camera, which you should probably already know about by now if you're just upgrading within the same system. See, Canon has now mastered this whole grandfathered system where they know that people just want essentially the same thing, even though it looks different on the outside and people are attracted to that as well. They want it to operate essentially the same way if they're just upgrading to this next system. They don't want to spend a lot of time learning things because that takes away from their time, takes away from them earning money, and lowers their confidence as a photographer. For example, this weekend I'll be doing an engagement shoot. I don't want to have a brand new camera. I don't want to shoot with the Sony A7R II just because the menu system is different and all this other stuff could potentially make me either lose a shot, switching from eye autofocus to all these other focus menus, and then everything's changing. It's not something that I'm willing to risk for my clients. So that's something to think about. Having a new system is good in the menus for Sony, but the fact that you have to go through it and learn it and get used to it and acclimated to it, it's going to be different for different people, and it's going to take away from their time. So the fact that you have to pay $6,500 for that, whereas Canon just made small changes to their menu system, gives us a point for Canon and a thumbs down for Sony on that one. Okay, so this upper LCD screen, like I told you guys before, I saw a guy with a Nikon Z series camera, and I was holding my 5D Mark II, and I'm like, wow, that looks like a new camera. It had like this upper screen with the blue LED kind of thing, or whatever this upper screen is, and it looked like a new camera because all these other, like Tony Northrup would say, Casio watch upper whatever screen displays, it just looked old, and it was old. It wouldn't tell you everything. It didn't tell you how many frames you really had left because the meter couldn't do it. I don't know. But at the end of the day, it looked and felt like a new camera. Well, I don't think I held it, but it looked like a new camera, and seeing is believing. So if you see a Ferrari that has made changes to, you know, how it looked and everything like that, and it looks like the company that made it is trying to give you something worth your money, and you can visually see that immediately before you even touch the camera, before you even hold it in your hands, you start to feel as though your money is being utilized to the maximum because they're doing something that they haven't done in 20, 30 years with these DSLRs, 40 years with these DSLRs. They look the same. All look the same. Now all of a sudden it looks different. You feel like your money's worth something. The next would be the animal eye tracking autofocus. Now, based off of what I've seen from Tony and Jared's videos and Chelsea's videos, is that these videos have animal tracking eye autofocus that's a little bit better than Sony's equivalent. Even though Sony came out with the eye tracking autofocus for humans and it's really good, people say it edges out the R5, Canon has made up for it with this animal autofocus. So if you wanted to catch it, I've seen some pictures. I'm not gonna lie to you. I've seen some pictures on Instagram and Facebook of animals that I have never seen before. Details that I have never seen before. Water, dust. Just because they have captured these images and they are not only in focus, but like extremely eye autofocus. So what you're focused on is the main thing on focus. You're not just focusing on the body of the image. You're now focusing on what you want to focus on, which is the eye of the bird, the eye of this. And so all these new animal pictures coming out from the R5 are world class. I've never seen anything like this. Not even from the flagship cameras. So it's getting good, especially at 20 frames a second at 45 megapixels with the R5. So I got to give points to this animal eye tracking autofocus on the Canon R5 for $38.99. It's really, I don't see how it can be beat. Another thing that's not great about the Sony A1. Now, of course, this is the highest costing hybrid mirrorless full frame body that Sony has. But a lot of people don't understand that a lot of people won't be buying this camera. Even though the technology is there, people won't be buying this. People will be buying the lower variations of this camera, especially since the megapixels are so high and the frames per second is so high. People don't need that, so they're gonna buy maybe the 50 megapixel camera that doesn't cost as much from Sony, like the A7R. But like I said before, pull up a Sony A7R, the earlier versions. Look at the camera. Look how much it's changed. Look at the Sony A7S. Same thing. Look at the Sony's A7 series. Same thing. Put all these cameras beside each other and see if you can, without looking at the model number, tell which camera is different. You can't, can you? Because all of them have really been designed the same way. And when you go to touch the buttons are the same. If you want to customize it, it's really customizable, where the R5 does not have that. But the buttons are not really in good spots, especially the record button. On the A7R Mark II, I try to smack that record button, and I always have to jab it on the side of the camera and make my thumb. It's just not convenient at all. But these design flaws also extend to what Tony was saying when he uses a long telephoto lens and he goes to eject it. If you hold this telephoto lens and you're holding it up close to your body, it's easy for you to knock that eject button on accident and have this $3,000 lens just roll off and fall off, and it's already heavy enough. If you accidentally touch this button, then your lens falls off. And I think it was just an oversight from Sony, but when Tony was doing that, I'm like, the lenses cost more than the body. If I just randomly eject a lens on accident and it slips or falls out of my hand because it's so heavy, then what's going to happen? Think about it. It's a really bad flaw because people are going to buy these $6,500 to do wildlife sports. All of these wildlife sports action shots are going to be usually done on what? A telephoto lens, 70-200, 100-400, 500mm primes, your 600mm primes, sometimes even 800mm in Canon's sake. And you got this camera that's designed to eject the lens at the same spot where you put the teleconverter on. It's going to fall off, and it's easy to fall off. It's going to be hard for Sony to fix that. So Sony's going to have to find a way to fix that pretty soon with a new iteration of camera, because they can't just fix it in a firmware update. So that's a really bad flaw for Sony, and I didn't even think about it until Tony mentioned it. Don't say that. Tony mentioned it. All right. So the number 3 is cost. For all these flaws, you have it at $6,500. Now, you go from the A9, which was like a $4,000 camera, which was the flagship at the time, to a $6,500 camera. Come on, guys. It's hard to justify that in reference to the R5, because the R5 is only like $38.99. So, and it's rivaling a lot of the Sony A1 specs. It's only 5 megapixels difference. Yeah, and it's only 10 frames a second difference with the. And a lot of times, Tony was saying that the R5 is really pushing the Sony. A lot of times he said the R5 made him think differently about what is expected from these new mirrorless cameras. And he set the high bar for the Sony A1. All right, so number 2 would be the CF Express type. Now, I keep getting this confused, but if I'm not mistaken, the R5 capitalizes on the CF Express Type B slot, whereas the Sony capitalizes on the CF Express Type A. Now you might be saying, what's the difference? Well, the CF Express Type B is faster than the CF Express Type A. But not only that, get this, the CF Express Type B is actually cheaper than the CF Express Type A. So you mean to tell me the Sony A1 is a more expensive camera than any other Sony hybrid mirrorless full-frame camera, and it also costs more for the cards, where a lot of people are now going to be upgrading to CF Express, because I hate SD cards because they break, and you spend all this money for the SD card and they end up breaking. But a lot of people are going to be upgrading for this new image quality, new speed, new processing, and it's slower than anything that Canon is going to bring out, and all the Canon cameras, which is pretty much just the R5 right now, is going to have this new CF Express B. It's faster and cheaper than the Sony, and you mean to tell me I gotta pay $6,500 for the Sony and only $3,900 for the Canon? Signing me up for the Canon, because it just works out that way, that it's greater. I don't know what it is about Canon, but they have really had a lot of foresight with the way they engineer things, the way they price things, and they're doing a really good job with marketing right now, especially with this new R1 and what it's slated to have in its rumored specs, because they're not to be outdone by Sony, and this is amazing. We're now getting a lot of the things that we wanted from Canon, even though some of the stuff now is going to come out with a premium, because that R1 is slated to be, what, $8,500, but I digress. We are still getting what we want from Canon. And the last thing I want to talk about today is the price of, yes, the lenses. Yes, Canon has not had a full holy trinity yet On the wide end, they're not giving you the 14 to 24, but they do have the 70 to 200 and they have the 24 to 70. That pretty much covers all the focal distance that you probably would want, but they cover, 24 to 200. So you pretty much have the focal distance that you want. The wide end lenses are typically niche-y, and yes, you'll use them, but not for portraiture and not to really get close to your subjects. So you don't necessarily have to worry about that. Also, Canon has a lot of adaptive capabilities with their lenses. You can not only adapt lenses, but you can adapt so many different lenses because the EF lenses were already great. And since Canon makes their own technology and makes their own lenses, they have great adaptation when it comes to these lenses. A lot of people wanted to upgrade to Sony and use their Canon lenses when they found out that the Canon lenses weren't operating those Sony cameras the way they needed to be operated. Eye tracking, autofocus was stripped. All these other things were stripped from the Sony camera because you adapted it. But Canon has the best lenses in the world pretty much. And these lenses are now working seamlessly with their mirrorless bodies. And so you get the great lenses, you get to keep them. And if you have them in good condition, because I know these older lenses Canon don't be servicing. If you have them in good condition, you get to save costs on lenses. All you gotta do is buy an adapter. And on top of that, Canon has a 50 millimeter Plastic Fantastic. These Plastic Fantastic lenses have always driven camera sales because a lot of people can get fast prime lenses letting in a lot of image quality at a nice focal distance that anybody can use for what, 100 and change? Sony has no variation for that. And the reason why Canon is so great at what they do, the reason why Canon is outdoing Sony right now and the future looks bright for Canon is because Canon started off correctly. The same thing why Canon defeated Nikon. Canon defeated Nikon because Nikon were relying on Sony to make sensors, were relying on a lot of things that they had no control over. And so since Canon has their own engineers, they can control their narrative, they can control their marketing, they can control what their cameras are going to have, they can control R&D, they can control the future of their cameras a lot better than any other company. Now, yes, Sony controls a lot, if not everything about their cameras, but they're new to the game. They're new to marketing. They're new to appealing to the public. They don't have this grandfather tradition of fame like Canon does. They don't have this huge lens lineup because they weren't being invested in at their infancy in the camera market as much as Canon was. So now Canon can use that influence. They can use that money. They can use those engineers. They can control and create their entire narrative. And with that being said, guys, I'm Devin with CenturyFX Studios. Thanks for watching this video. Patreon links, affiliate links, R5 if you want to buy this down there, A7S III. What else if you want to buy? A1 down there. Well, whenever it comes out or if it's come out already, it's already down there. Stay tuned for the next video.